Hey guys, Joe Coolas here once again for K Tactical. So this is a very delayed, long-waited for review, and it's of the 1911 for Rock Island Armory, also known as Arms Corps and whatnot. Now, right off the back, it comes with your standard piano-style case. Nothing too special, nothing bad. It has its little emblem and whatnot right in there in the back. The back is kind of plain. It has just a little bit of height differential, so the whole thing isn't going to get scratched, or shouldn't get scratched, but obviously did get a little bit. But has your two latches and two places for locking it. Let's open it up. Now, you're going to notice right off the back this gun isn't stock anymore, and I'm going to shoot a picture of the stock standard gun. Alright, so you've seen what it looked like. Now obviously, I'm going to do a little bit of the whole review with the parts, but you're going to notice that I obviously swapped off the grips, the trigger, and the compensator. And that's all I decided to do. Now the gun itself, I'm going to get to those parts later, but the gun itself functions fine. There's a lot of iffy parts when I was like, it's a cheaper gun, really iffy on buying it. And overall it actually turned out very, very well. But there's a lot of pros and a lot of cons. Now, basically these guys are based in the Philippines. Philippines, I can't pronounce that right now. I'm terrible. Sorry guys, this is a morning review. It's from there. And again, it's imported, whatnot, and it's pretty standard. This gun has, and again, right off the back when I say this Rock Island Armory has quite a few models. Again, this was the stock model, and I'm going to assume that the trigger pulls, all that stuff are going to be the same for even their more deluxe models. But even in the stock model, it has a lot of good pros and cons. Now, unfortunately, this model, and again, there's really no starting point for me in these things. Sight basis is, because obviously this is the high polished nickel. The sight basis, they didn't give you more of your traditional sights. It's more of the flashiness, all around flashy. So I'm going to get this as best as I can, but your sight basis isn't necessarily the best. Especially outside with a lot more light and whatnot, it is not the most ideal. Now, besides that, again, right off the back, there are a couple disadvantages. Now, the slide and function of whatnot are all pretty good, except because this is so high polished nickel, not like you'd ever really want to grab it here to rack it, but even in the rear, it is still a little bit on the really smooth side, where simple things like racking the slide, and yes, I already checked, it's empty, there's no magazine, but racking the slide is to some degrees a little bit harder than it should be normally. Again, only because before and after it were very smooth. You have to go right on it, and even right on it, it's still a little smooth. So, some right off the back disadvantages. Now, with that being said, otherwise, the smoothness of it is actually kind of a nice feeling to some degrees as well. Besides that, you do have some more weather protection, obviously, and whatnot, due to the finish. Kind of nice. And actually, since we're on the finish, let's talk about that. They kind of did it in an interesting way. And again, I'm not familiar with everything that's ever been nickel plated and chrome and whatnot. This is nickel, high polished nickel. But things like, I want to call them rivets, I don't know if they are, you can tell that the slide was done and then those were put in afterwards. As well in these slide release and in the magazine release. So, kind of a couple iffy areas on how they did their finishing, and as well, I do not know how all this is going to appear in the picture, but yeah, you can kind of see it there, right? It's right in front of my thumb. There we go, very, very clear right there. There is one finished effect on this gun as well, and part of the reason that they're so cheap. Now, they are nice guns, more or less, so do not get that confused. But finish wise, you kind of get what you pay for in some aspects, so don't get me wrong. Finish wise, not as ideal as I would have liked. But again, I think that they probably did it that way on purpose, because otherwise things like the slide release, if this was all very just smooth to the hand, I could see just kind of your fingers flying off there more than not. Assuming that's why that was done. As well, one thing I'm going to add right off the back too, the screws were that kind of matte color, so, or matte, like they weren't really high polished. That looked kind of weird, so I actually ended up getting those polished off when I got the trigger and the compensator done as well. Now let's talk about other things like the furniture that it came with. The grips. These grips are terrible. I will never ever use these because, for one, it's pretty crappy wood. I'm not going to try to make it appear better than it is. Crappy wood. So I obviously had to get something different than this right off the back. And for one, it just looked crappy. You can kind of, you know, didn't look ridiculous, I guess, but just not for me. So I had to go with grips. And obviously this is a Hitman themed 1911. So for when I looked at this gun cosmetically wise, I was like, I need to get new grips. Did that, and again, things like the trigger, the standard trigger was not bad at all, but the pull was not bad. And the front little compensator bezel, or whatever, I don't even think that's the correct term for it. I know it's not called compensator, but I'm sorry guys, I don't know all the technical terms, and I do not feel like looking it up right now. But anyways, we all know what I'm talking about. So anyways, not that these parts are bad by any means, whoops, but I just wanted something a little bit more custom, a little bit more neater looking. And again, because I was doing this as a themed gun before I even bought it. So I ended up going with a Wilson Combat trigger, which is, I adjusted to be about 3.5 pound trigger. And I want to say these are maybe a 6 pound trigger, maybe. Probably more of a 5. Not bad. Very reliable. And as well, I'm going to put this out too. When I first got the gun, I shot about 150 rounds. Then that's when I got these other parts for it, and then I shot the next about 450 through it after that. So these parts were perfectly fine. Now, in the actual function test wise, again the slide, it does not use the standard long stroke system. And I'm going to take it apart just so you guys can see what I mean. Alright, so I got it apart here and you guys can see what I mean. Again, I do not know all the technical terms, especially for the 1911 series. But it does not use the full system for that. It uses the more compact half version. Now, the only reason I'm mentioning this is because some people claim there's better accuracy, better reliability, blah, 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 blah. I personally have not really noticed that. And overall, again, it's been very, very, very good. I'll get to its downfalls a little bit later. But that as alone is good. Now, besides that, everything else in the lower, as you know, is the safety. Everything works fine. The rear safety, the sears. Actually, one thing I guess I will say is I will notice in the action, the rear sear and whatnot, it seems to catch just a little bit. And I'm talking just a ridiculously small amount. Where just if you pull back the slide really slow, you'll kind of know what I'm talking about. But I think that's kind of still common in 1911s a little bit. Not really a big deal. Eventually, I might swap out the sear, but it's kind of iffy if I ever do it. So we'll see. But besides that, even things like magazines. Obviously, the magazine that it came with functions fine. Comes right out. And underneath here, I actually have some other ones. These are like the K magazines. They're very, 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 well, they're $5. You kind of figure it out yourself. They actually function fine, but they're not machined the best. Those fall out decent enough. So, and then we got a Chip McCormick. Those just slide right out. But you know, so obviously, the mag well is done proper, which I guess is not very common in your super cheapo 1911s, apparently. They like to stick more. So besides that, the lower receiver is great. Now on the upper, again, nothing really terrible except the whole pulling back the slide. Again, I would think that to be more or less normal on something that's nickel-plated. I will say the only disadvantage I had about this, and this is probably the ammo, not the gun by any means, but after I shot the first 150 times, I cleaned it. Then, that's where the other part of the test came in. How much can this take with me abusing it? And what it pretty much led to was, I shot that first 150, cleaned it, and then I want to say, but within about a 2-month span, I shot 150, you know, a couple of weeks plus later, shot another 150, a couple weeks later, shot another 150, and then eventually I shot another 100 or so, and then I actually kind of felt like an idiot, because again, this thing was working like a champ, you know, and again, this is your cheapo Tula ammo, but this thing was working like a champ, and then my friend ended up wanting to shoot it, and he's interested in 1911s, and we actually had a problem where it wasn't feeding well, I guess I shouldn't really say it wasn't feeding properly, but it appeared not to be. And what was happening, again, couldn't really figure it out right there at the range, you know, because it was just kind of doing whatever. But I ended up taking a look at it when we got home, and kind of a crazy situation, but again, probably being the issue of them. If you push down on this, and if you were to have something better than this, some sort of needle or something, you'll notice that's obviously the firing pin and the spring. This plate would slide down some because the firing pin with the spring was sticking some because of all the gunk in there, and the plate was falling down just a little bit, so it was catching on the slide, and then it just wasn't coming back all the way, so it looked as if it was misfeeding and whatnot, and that wasn't the issue at all. So again, that was not really so much an issue with the gun, it was more just the ammo clogging it up. Again, Tula, very dirty ammo. So actually it's so dirty that the compensator, if I can get the right lighting, you'll see the stuff that's built up in there. And I cannot get it apparently right now. You know, you can kind of see it there. The middle one's kind of obvious, but... So, that worked pretty well. Well, let's put this guy back together, and I'll finish this review. So we've got to put back together. Now, here's the thing. A lot of, when you're talking about guns, it comes to price point. Now, again, I pretty much went over everything I think there's to really go through with this gun. And again, ended up doing some custom stuff as well, obviously. But price point on these are around $400 to $450, again, completely depending on what model you get. Now for me, I wanted to do a themed version, obviously, and for me, this one I think runs about $510 or so. Again, the other ones only run a little over $4. I ended up actually getting this gun though for $420 because it was I ended up, you know, auction-wise, I just got a great price on it. And then there was $50 for shipping and FFL fee. So no taxes. So that kind of pretty much counteracts taxes and whatnot. So I got $470 is what I actually paid for the gun. Again, with the stock stuff. So what I'm going to say is right off the back, that's a great price. And again, if I would have got one of the more basic, simpler models, which stores will sell much higher, I'm just going to put that FYI, should obviously support a local store. Hopefully you do. But if you're like me and you only got like Cabela's, which I don't want to completely diss on them, but most of the people that work behind the desk don't know what the heck they're doing, and the prices are on the somewhat higher side. If a gun's cosmetically messed up, you can get it dirty cheap. But otherwise, besides that, you know, it's just, half the times I don't really like going to Cabela's and whatnot. So anyways, support your local gun stores if you have them. But again, being a buyer, we like to get things cheap. So, if you can, buy one online like I did. And you know, it's just kind of one of those things. So anyways, you guys can decide. But so about $470, $450 is what we're going to go with for the gun. That price is utterly amazing. You can really not beat it. And again, with the only issue being the whole the rear plate, that might have been some factory grease built up in there. And actually, to fix that, I just took a 223 cleaner and I shoved it in there and, you know, around. And then with that, I you know, ended up, you know, just putting a cleaning cloth through it and worked just like new. So, and as well, I haven't had that issue at all since. So, besides those issues, I think it's a great gun. Now, here's the fact: you're gonna buy these, and you're probably, unless you get a hold of the gun at a shop, you're probably gonna realize how much you hate these wood grips. So this is kind of the other part of it. You're probably gonna spend a good $20, $30 on grips, possibly more. Really depending on what you like. Some people do like And the one thing I'm going to put out, these bulge a little bit more. They are the more a little bit slimlined versions. Then you can get the like the Hogue that have the grips and whatnot. There's a lot of different versions, but probably countering that you're probably going to buy different grips. Now, with that being said, there are some cool versions that are still relatively inexpensive with different triggers. Again, I'm going to assume more or less just look-wise, cosmetic. I'm assuming that they don't have adjustable triggers like this Wilson's adjustable for the trigger pull. They have cool hammers. I do not think I've seen anything for the compensators. But they got some cool, and different sights and whatnot. They got some cool options out there. I think the price point is great on it. I'm not going to argue with that at all. Now, for my personal wise, I'm still going to say it's an amazing gun because, again, what I did is got the gun for $470. And then, what I ended up doing, obviously buying this trigger, which was $35, and then the compensator, which was $40. Okay? So that puts me up to about, the grips. That put me up to about $595. Then, I ended up sending the compensator, the trigger, and whatnot, and the screws in to get nickel plated. That, if I remember right, after I shipped it there, got them shipped back, it was about $25. Is that expensive? Yes, but, hell, $10 is just in shipping alone. And as well, for the fact I don't have to do it, it's actually pretty inexpensive. So altogether, I got about $620 into here. That's, to me, an amazing deal. For something that shoots this well, and as well for accuracy-wise, I already have those videos out. At 50 yards, it can do a good 75+% accuracy at will. That's pretty damn good with a 1911, 45 and whatnot. So besides that, pretty good. And only, again, $620. I think you have a very, very nice, very, very cool pistol, which if you would have went with a Remington or a Colt, this would easily cost you more than $1,000. So, and magazine that it comes with, again, I will say this, I do not care for it the most. It has that extension on it. I'm not the biggest fan of that. I don't necessarily hate it either. I prefer a matching mag. That's just me. Now here's the other thing. You decide to end up swapping this stuff out. For one, if I really wanted to, I could Duracoat these. Or I could sell them with the aspect of, and if you want, I can Duracoat them. I have a lot of colors available. And then you can obviously sell this trigger and this thing, and you can probably make at least 15 to 20 bucks. At least. Because again, being a standard, nickel trigger, if somebody's building one, this might be more handy than not, but it's just kind of random stuff. So there's some kind of neat parts to it. But besides that, all in all, great gun for the money. Now, one last thing that I kind of will add to this is you do get what you pay for a little bit. I will say, again, the cosmetic defect. Not the biggest fan of it. It is very small, and where it's at, it's pretty unnoticeable. But if you're looking for self-defense and all that stuff, why would you want to carry a 1911 is kind of beyond me again, because of the round count. But you probably want to go with something better, quality-wise. If you're looking for a recreational shoot to have fun with gun, this is probably more ideal for you. Again, I have not had any real cycle problems, anything like that with it, but in the pure aspect of self-defense, I would suggest quality. You might get mad at me for saying that, but that's the truth. And I'll kind of leave that for the carry, all that stuff, but it's a very fun gun to shoot. It's a very interesting, neat gun to shoot. Get a lot of attention, and it's just one of those things that's a lot of fun. So, and I guess besides that, again, as I kind of mentioned before, they have the compact versions, the tacticalized versions. They have it in, I believe, 38, 9, and 45. So there's a lot of options for the buyer. They have a lot of things going for them in many aspects. So if you're interested, keep your eyes open, gun broker, all that stuff. I think it's something that will probably go up in value. Again, I think they're made great. Not something that I'd necessarily trust my life with, but mainly because these things are fucking heavier than shit. So, anyways, besides that, thanks for watching. Feel free to sub, comment, like, all that stuff below, guys. And yeah, once again, thanks for watching.